Otto Warmbier was an ordinary boy from Ohio, a student at the University of Virginia, full of plans, ambitions, and youthful eagerness to discover the world. Instead of lounging on the beach or visiting safe places, Otto longed for an extreme adventure that was meant to be a memory for a lifetime. Together with a group of travelers from the Young Pioneer Tours Agency, he set out for one of the most mysterious and closed-off countries in the world, North Korea. This trip was not an ordinary journey. It was a voyage into the heart of a totalitarian regime, where every step of a foreigner is closely monitored. Once there, Otto stayed with the group, followed the rules, and caused no trouble. At least that is what everyone thought until the last evening. On the night before the planned departure, at the Yangakdo Hotel, everything was about to change. That was when his nightmare began, one from which he never returned. He was suddenly detained by North Korean authorities and accused of an act that, for any tourist, would be considered unimaginable madness. According to the authorities, he removed a propaganda poster from a wall, which in North Korea was considered sabotage and an attack on the state, punished as the gravest crime. Otto was isolated, deprived of contact with anyone, and for many weeks his fate remained a mystery. The media were silent. The world was silent. In February 2016, a recording was released in which Otto, with eyes red from crying, begged for mercy and forgiveness. The video shocked public opinion. He looked terrified, frightened, as if every word was spoken under the barrel of a gun. Experts agreed. The testimony was coerced, staged as part of a political spectacle to display the regime's power and humiliate the opponent. Despite the boy's visible suffering, the Korean court showed no mercy and sentenced him to 15 years of hard labor for crimes against the state. The verdict was devastating. For a 21-year-old student, it essentially meant the end of his life, both physically and mentally, in a country without any rules. After the sentence was announced, Otto disappeared, vanished from the eyes of the world, with no information, no proof of life, not even official statements. His family knew nothing. They only waited in growing fear, hearing rumors of brutal interrogations, starvation, and forced labor. Time passed, and hope faded. No one knew if Otto was still alive, and if so, what his daily life looked like behind the walls of a communist hell. Voices of former prisoners emerged, speaking of beatings, torture, isolation, conditions in which a person disappears not only from sight, but from themselves. The silence lasted for over a year, until in June 2017, North Korea suddenly broke it. Otto was to return to the USA, but not on his own feet. Not as a free man, but on a stretcher, in a condition that horrified even military doctors. He was in a coma, not speaking, not moving, not responding. His body breathed, but Otto was no longer the same boy who once dreamed of traveling. Doctors in Cincinnati could not believe it. His brain was severely damaged, as if he had gone through a hell that no medicine could reverse. There were no signs of fractures, but there was something worse, evidence of prolonged oxygen deprivation to the brain, which meant a slow, patient agony of consciousness. The family watched Otto die. Though he breathed, he was like a shadow of himself, silent, empty, as if his soul had left long ago, leaving only the body. On the 19th of June, just a few days after returning home, Otto Warmbier died, never regaining consciousness, never speaking a word. The story of Otto Warmbier was not an exception, but one of many cases that show how cruel and unpredictable the North Korean regime is. In 2014, Matthew Todd Miller deliberately destroyed his passport and asked for asylum, wanting to explore the system from the inside. Instead of an adventure, he ended up in the hands of the authorities, who interrogated him for many months. He was imprisoned, monitored, and completely stripped of his rights. After being expelled from the country, he said only one sentence that chilled the blood. that the truth in North Korea is worse than propaganda itself. Another prisoner was Kim Dong-chul, a South Korean-born U.S. citizen who was accused of espionage against the state. He disappeared behind prison walls for many years and was released only when political winds began to shift under Donald Trump's administration. Jeffrey Fowl was a tourist who made a seemingly small gesture. He left a Bible in a nightclub, not knowing that it was a sentence on his freedom. He was detained immediately, held for half a year, and his life depended solely on international pressure and diplomatic maneuvering. Australian blogger Alex Sigley studied in Pyongyang and wrote a blog about daily life in Korea, not realizing that he was playing with fire. He suddenly disappeared without a trace, and after a few days was expelled from the country, without explanation, without comment, as if he had ceased to exist for the system. His story shows that even the smallest word can be considered a threat, that every tourist is only a temporary guest on a powder keg. Megumi Yokota was not a tourist, but her fate reveals the brutality of the North Korean regime. She was abducted from Japan at the age of 13. The authorities admitted that they trained spies with her help. Since then, it has remained unknown whether she is alive, where she is, and if she will ever return home. Kenneth Bay, a missionary from the U.S., was also sentenced to 15 years of hard labor for trying to spread Christian teachings. He was treated as an enemy of the state, shackled, forced to work beyond his strength. He regained freedom only after long diplomatic negotiations. Canadian pastor Hyun Soo Lim did not engage in political activity. He traveled with humanitarian aid until he was eventually accused of subversive activity. He spent 2 years in Korea. After returning, he was no longer the same man, broken mentally and physically, as if his soul had remained behind bars. The regime created a long and absurd list of prohibitions for tourists. It is forbidden to take down portraits of the leaders, talk to residents, or ask about politics. Even photographing poverty, empty shelves, or ruined buildings is forbidden. The truth must be hidden behind the smiles of the guides. One of the most serious crimes is taking any poster. For such a souvenir, one can spend the rest of their life in a labor camp. When a tourist crosses an invisible line, a line they do not know, they become a hostage, a tool of propaganda, or a bargaining chip. Most of those who returned never share the details of their stay, out of fear, shame, or deeply rooted trauma.